Hello, welcome to another episode of Arthritis and You, a Joint Journey. Today, we've got something special lined up, so buckle up because it's time for the deep dive. Let's give a warm welcome to our hosts, Arthur and Sarah.
Ever feel like you're just drowning in health information? You see a video, read an article, and suddenly you're trying to piece it all together? It's tough, right? Trying to figure out what's real, what helps, and what's just, well, noise. Especially for you and your own health choices. So today, we're going to try and cut through some of that. We're doing a deep dive specifically on Boswellia. You might know it as Indian frankincense. It comes up a lot, especially when people talk about joint health. And we've got these sources you shared, a YouTube discussion, a detailed webpage, both from Alberta Rheumatology, pretty solid stuff. Our goal here is simple. Unpack what the science actually says. Is it effective? Is it safe? Who could it actually help? We want to get you those aha moments minus the headache.
Exactly. And, with natural products, you often hear powerful stories, anecdotes. But today, we're focusing purely on the research, the studies, the medical insights. It's about building that factual understanding, separating observation from maybe just wishful thinking sometimes.
Okay, good. So let's start right at the beginning. What is Boswellia, fundamentally?
Right. So Boswellia isn't just one thing. It's actually a whole group of plants, flowering plants. You find them mainly in tropical areas, Africa, Asia. But the one we're really interested in, the one usually studied for health, that's Boswellia serrata. It's a tree from India. That's why it gets called Indian frankincense.
Indian frankincense, okay. And the useful part comes from?
Comes from the gum resin. They extract it from the tree's bark. And inside that resin, that's where you find the active compounds. They're called boswellic acids. Those are the key players, it seems.
Boswellic acids. Got it. Okay, let's unpack this. How does it actually work? What's the theory behind the benefits?
Yeah, the mechanism is pretty interesting. These boswellic acids, they seem to have anti-inflammatory effects. The main way they're thought to do this is by inhibiting an enzyme. It's called 5-lipoxygenase.
5-lipoxygenase. Sounds technical.
It is a bit, but basically that enzyme is a key part of the body's inflammation process. So inhibiting it could dampen that process. And among the different boswellic acids, there's one called AKBA. Yeah, AKBA. It seems to be the most potent inhibitor of that enzyme. Though it's worth saying we don't know the exact perfect amount or percentage of AKBA needed in an extract to get the best effect. That's still a bit unclear.
Okay, so it targets inflammation pathways, possibly quite effectively with this AKBA compound. But that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Does it actually work in practice? What are the studies showing?
That really is the crucial point. And the sources focus heavily on its use for rheumatic conditions, primarily osteoarthritis or OA. The idea is using it to help manage OA, specifically to lessen joint pain and improve how well people can move, their function. What the research suggests is, well, it may be effective for that, decreasing OA pain, improving function. But, and this is a really important but, the evidence strongly points towards short-term effectiveness.
Short-term, what does that mean in this context?
Typically, the studies showing benefits looked at periods of about 1 to 3 months. Beyond that 3-month mark, the evidence for continued benefit just isn't really there yet. We don't have solid long-term data.
Interesting. So a potential help for a few months, but maybe not a long-term solution based on current evidence. Why is that long-term evidence often harder to come by for natural products? Is it funding or?
That's a great point. It's often a mix of things. Funding is definitely a factor. Long-term trials are expensive, and the commercial incentive might not be the same as for a patentable drug. Plus, natural extracts can vary batch to batch, which adds complexity to very long studies. Consistency can be a challenge.
Makes sense. Okay, so bearing that short-term focus in mind, let's dig into those specific studies mentioned in the sources. They sounded quite rigorous.
They were. We're talking randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, the kind designed to minimize bias. And for OA, they paint a fairly consistent picture, at least in the short run. Several trials using specific extracts like 5-loxane and Apres FLEX.
Those are branded extracts?
Yes, standardized to contain certain levels of AKBA, actually. So, for example, one 90-day study with 5-loxane looked at patients with mild to moderate OA. They gave doses enriched to 30% AKBA. And the results, pretty significant improvements compared to placebo. We're talking about pain scores on a 100-point scale.
Yeah.
The Boswellia groups improved by like 36% to 41% from their starting point. Placebo is only 15%.
Wow, quite a difference. And function.
Similar story for physical function, measured using something called the WOX score. Again, much better improvement in the Boswellia groups, 17% to 21% better, compared to just 7% for placebo.
Okay.
And another key finding in several studies, including another 90-day one comparing Apis-OTX and 5-loxin, was the use of rescue medication. Fewer people taking Boswellia needed to reach for extra pain relief, specifically NSAIDs like ibuprofen.
Ah, the NSAIDs. So the fact they needed fewer NSAIDs suggests the Boswellia was actually handling the pain better on its own.
Exactly. It's a strong indicator that the primary treatment was having a real effect. People in the placebo groups needed that backup pain relief more often. Even in patients with severe OA, a 30-day study using APROS-FLEX showed clinically important reductions in pain and improvement in function compared to placebo. And one more, a 4-month study used a general Boswellia serrata extract, BSE, also standardized for AKBA. It found big improvements in things like a 6-minute walk test. People on Boswellia could walk about 80 meters further after 4 months. Placebo group, only 10 meters further.
80 meters versus 10 meters. That's quite tangible.
It is. So summing it up for OA, these trials, while relatively small, were well conducted. They consistently show these short-term benefits reducing pain, improving function, and importantly, they also suggested a decent safety profile within those short study periods.
Okay, that's pretty clear for osteoarthritis short-term promise. So what does this all mean then for other conditions? You mentioned RA earlier, rheumatoid arthritis.
Right. And this is where the picture changes significantly. For rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, the sources are quite explicit. There's currently a lack of convincing evidence to support using Boswellia for RA.
Really? Even though it's also inflammatory?
Yes, some studies might exist, but the results are conflicting or inconclusive. So based on the evidence we have, its use isn't generally recommended for people with RA. More research is definitely needed there before we can say otherwise.
That's a critical distinction to make. Okay, so shifting gears from does it work to practical stuff. What about safety, side effects, interactions?
Absolutely essential considerations. Let's talk safety first. Generally speaking, Boswellia seems to be well tolerated when people take it orally, by mouth, for periods up to about 6 months.
Up to 6 months.
Right. But the big caveat here is long-term safety. That's basically unknown territory. We just don't have the data on using it for, say, years on end.
Okay, and common side effects within that 6-month window.
The ones reported most often are usually mild and related to the digestive system. Things like diarrhea, nausea, maybe some abdominal pain or heartburn.
All right, typical GI stuff, sometimes seen with supplements. What about interactions? That's always a worry.
Yes, and there are a couple of important potential interactions mentioned in the sources. First, drug interactions. At high doses, and isn't perfectly defined here, Boswellia might have what are called immunostimulant properties.
Immunostimulant, so it could potentially ramp up the immune system.
Potentially, yes. And if that happens, it could theoretically work against medications that are designed to suppress the immune system. Think about drugs used for autoimmune conditions, like rheumatoid arthritis itself, or lupus, multiple sclerosis.
Ah, so it could interfere with those treatments.
It's a potential risk that needs consideration. Also, Boswellia might interfere with how the body processes other drugs. It seems it can moderately inhibit certain liver enzymes, those CYP enzymes, like CYP1A2, 2C9, 3A4, among others.
And those enzymes break down lots of different medications, don't they?
Exactly. They metabolize a huge range of common drugs. If Boswellia slows those enzymes down, it could lead to higher levels of those other drugs in your system, which could mean more side effects from those drugs.
Okay, that sounds like a significant potential issue.
It definitely highlights the need for caution. And that links to the other point, interactions with other diseases. Again, because of that potential immunostimulant effect at higher doses, it might affect the control of existing autoimmune diseases themselves. It's a complex picture because, remember, the anti-inflammatory effect seen in OA studies happens at certain doses. But these potential immune-stimulating or enzyme-inhibiting effects might become more relevant at different, possibly higher doses. It's not fully mapped out.
This really drives home the point made in the sources, doesn't it? It is so important for you, the listener, to tell your doctor about everything you're taking, including supplements like Boswellia.
Absolutely critical. Full transparency with your doctor is key. And the sources also specifically recommend checking with your pharmacist.
Right. Why the pharmacist specifically?
Pharmacists are experts in drug interactions. They have the databases and the knowledge to cross-reference Boswellia with all your other medications, prescription or over-the-counter, to flag those potential enzyme or immune-related conflicts we just talked about?
That makes perfect sense. They can really connect those dots. Okay, so let's try and tie this all together for everyone listening. We've dug into Boswellia, Indian frankincense. The key takeaway seems to be it shows some real promise based on decent, though small, studies for helping with osteoarthritis pain and function, but primarily in the short term, like 1 to 3 months.
That's a good summary. Promise for short-term OA relief.
But for rheumatoid arthritis, the evidence just isn't there, so it's not recommended.
Correct. Lack of evidence for RA.
And crucially, while it seems okay safety-wise for up to 6 months, long-term safety is a question mark.
A big question mark, yes.
Plus, there are those potential side effects, mainly mild stomach issues, and the really important considerations around drug interactions and potential effects on autoimmune conditions.
Which brings us back to that core advice. Talk to your doctor before starting it, and definitely run it by your pharmacist to check for interactions with anything else you're taking, especially if you have an autoimmune condition.
Yeah, that caution seems really warranted here. We really hope this deep dive has helped you make a bit more sense of Boswellia. The goal is always to give you a clearer, more informed view to navigate these natural health options.
Hopefully understanding the science, what's known, what's promising, and importantly, what's still unknown helps you feel more empowered.
Definitely. And as we wrap up, maybe something for you to think about. We see this pattern sometimes with natural products, potentially good short-term benefits, like with Boswellia for OA, but lingering questions about long-term safety or broader effectiveness. So the question for you is, how do you personally weigh that? How do you balance the appeal of immediate relief against those unknown long-term factors when you're making decisions about your own health? What does short-term versus long-term really mean in the context of your life and your health journey? Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
This has been another episode of Arthritis and You, A Joint Journey, brought to you by the Rheum team from albertarheumatology.com, your trusted evidence-based suite of resources available 24/7. Straight from Alberta, but for folks around the world. Our hosts today, Arthritis and Sarah Upis, technical producer, John Ivan, and our executive producer, Stephen Cates. While we work hard to maintain the accuracy of our information, we accept no legal responsibility for any errors or omissions. Remember, always check with your own physician first. Join us next time for another Deep Dive.